So, now I have the distinct honor of introducing our keynote speaker. So when you read over her bio, which is in your program, you get to ask, wow, 1986 she graduated from college. She's 25 years old. So that should pique some interest amongst you of how did she achieve that success over time in a short period of time. Because as General Huntoon and I just conversed a little while ago, I said, what were we doing 13 years ago? 13 years ago, well, I won't bore you with the details, but we were mediocre officers at that time until we became famous. But I want to say that her short bio, her one-page bio, does not reflect all of what she has accomplished throughout her 3 decades of highly distinguished military career. General Grosso is one of the highest ranking female officers in the United States Armed Forces, if not as well in the United States Air Force. She is the first woman to hold the office of the Deputy Chief of Staff for Manpower, Personnel, and Services in the United States Air Force Staff, a leader at that. She joins a short list of female flag officers, exceptional role models in uniform, who promotes diversity and competitiveness, to mentor and lead women and men alike to make America's soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen, active, reserve, and National Guard, much stronger and prominent and growing leaders of character. With her leadership and persona, I had a chance to meet her for the very first time, and I'm convinced that she defines the high qualities of a quintessential leader of character. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Lieutenant General Gina Grosso.
Wow, well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I have to say, I never get a lunch this fancy, so it was really wonderful. You know, the other thing that's very remarkable to me here is just the amazing breadth of talent from both young to old, and I didn't realize we were going to have cadets here and these amazing World War II veterans. So let me say what an honor it is to be spending lunch with these amazing World War II veterans. Thank you for your service. We serve in your shadow. My father was in the Army Air Corps, so you really resonated with me. And then to have the next generation coming by, the persons that's going to replace me one day. So to all of the young officers, the cadets coming up, what a pleasure to be able to spend some time with you today. Thank you for choosing to serve your country. You know, we can never take that for granted in this country, that we have so many talented young men and women choosing to serve so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we have today and tomorrow. So thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I know that we are in good hands because we're in your hands. So they asked me to talk a little bit about diversity and inclusion, and I didn't put too many leadership comments in my remarks, but we do have some time for question and answer, so I would be happy to talk anything you want to talk about, sort of about my own personal leadership thoughts. So I wanted to share with you how the Air Force thinks about diversity and inclusion and how important it is for our strategic future. You know, we in this country are very fortunate that we have so much opportunity. Our country is blessed with abundant natural and human resources. We are a prosperous nation whose people are able to live productive and fulfilling lives based on their talents. Americans are remarkably creative, we are independent thinkers, and we bring together the wisdom of many different cultures and backgrounds. I don't know of any other place in the world where you can get the same cultural mix that you have here in the United States. I think it's wonderful to have the cultural influences of Asians, Pacific Islanders, Hispanics, African Americans, Eastern Europeans, South Americans, and so many others. While the Air Force has many people from diverse backgrounds, we are not nearly as diverse as the nation we serve. We recognize this gap and are working hard to close it. But it's not just about being diverse. We must also continue to strive to be more inclusive. People must be able to see themselves being successful in our organization. They must feel seen, heard, and valued for who they are and for the skills they bring to our organization. In the simplest of terms, diversity is the mix, while inclusion is getting the mix to work well together. This concept of inclusion is so important to the Air Force's future success that it's one of only 2 strategic imperatives in our new 30-year strategy, A Call to the Future, which we published in May of 2015. The other strategic imperative is agility. Inclusiveness ensures that we are leveraging the broadest possible set of human resources to produce the maximum number of options. In this way, inclusiveness serves as the power underwriting our agility. An inclusive environment allows everyone to engage to their fullest capability without limits imposed by artificial barriers. Without inclusiveness, diverse viewpoints and creative solutions are stifled, and agility is diminished. This conversation about diversity and inclusion is a natural fit for your May Leadership Luncheon, because as you know, since 1992, the month of May has been designated to recognize the achievements and contributions to the American story by Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. In May, we celebrate the cultural traditions, ancestry, native languages, and unique experiences representing among more than 56 ethnic groups speaking more than 100 languages from Asia and the Pacific Islands who live in the United States. This observance gives us the opportunity to honor, recognize, and celebrate the rich diversity, leadership, and enduring empowerment of all Asian American and Pacific Islanders and their dedicated service and contributions to the betterment of our nation. For more than 170 years, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have contributed to our nation's greatest undertakings, shaped our cultural diversity, and added significantly to the vibrancy of our national fabric. Some notable examples include Senator Daniel Inouye, a World War II veteran who was a Medal of Honor recipient. He was also an 8-term U.S. Senator and was the highest-ranking Asian American politician in U.S. history. Maya Lin, and I have to say she's one of my favorite, the world-renowned architect of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., and one of the most important public artists of this century. As a 21-year-old architecture student at Yale University, Ms. Lin designed the Vietnam Veterans Memorial as a class project, then entered it into the largest design competition in American history. So imagine that. I know there's some 21-year-olds here. Just imagine what you can do if you don't have a barrier that says you shouldn't apply. I think that's why I admire her so much. Former Secretary Eric Shinseki, a graduate of West Point, was appointed to serve as both the 7th Secretary of Veterans Affairs and the 34th Army Chief of Staff, where he was the first Asian American to serve in both positions and the first to be promoted to 4 stars. He is a veteran of 2 combat tours in Vietnam, for which he was awarded 3 Bronze Stars for Valor and 2 Purple Hearts. Tulsi Gabbard, the Congresswoman representing Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District, made history in 2013 as the first female combat veteran, first Hindu, and first female of Samoan ancestry to become a member of Congress. She is also a member of the Hawaii National Guard, where she served 2 combat tours in the Middle East. Additionally, she made history in 2002 when she, at the age of 21, she became the youngest person ever to be elected to the Hawaii State Legislature. The Armed Forces have been fortunate to have more than 264,000 Asian Americans serve our nation, while another 27,000 are Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander military veterans. Members of this community have served and continue to serve with great honor. And I just think about those are just a small handful of this huge population, and just hearing their stories is so inspiring to me. I was practicing this before I came over today, and just every time I said one of those stories of those amazing people, it just inspires you to be the best that you can be. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team was an infantry regiment in the United States Army comprised of Americans of Japanese ancestry. The 442nd fought in Italy and France during World War II against the German army of Hitler's Third Reich. The 442nd Regiment was the most decorated unit for its size and length of service in the history of American warfare. 21 of its members were awarded Medals of Honor, the nation's most prestigious award for valor in action against an enemy force. The unit's motto was "Go for Broke." Perhaps the most well-known Air Force member of Asian Pacific Islander ancestry is Ellison Onizuka. Born in 1946 in Hawaii, he entered the Air Force in January 1970 and flew a variety of aircraft, eventually logging more than 1,700 flying hours. In January 1978, he became an astronaut candidate for NASA. Onizuka flew his first space shuttle mission aboard the Discovery in January 1985. He was a mission specialist aboard the Orbiter Challenger when it exploded a little over 1 minute after launch in January 1986. Congress posthumously promoted him to colonel, and the Air Force renamed Sunnyvale Air Force Station, California, Onizuka on January of 1994. In 2013, General Brigadier Miyoko Shanley, Deputy Commander of the 412th Theater Engineer Command, made history as the first female Army Reserve engineer promoted to general officer. Her promotion also made her the second Japanese-American woman to be promoted to general officer. These are but a few examples of the extraordinary talent that resides in our Asian American Pacific Islander community, and why, as a department, as in an Air Force, we need to be able to attract, recruit, and retain among these amazing Americans. On a more personal level, the 3 years I served in Asia, 2 in South Korea, and sadly just one, what seemed incredibly short year in Hawaii, they were critical to it was literally 365 days to the year, to the day. They were critical experiences in my development as an officer and a leader. Being of Italian heritage myself, I learned how Eurocentric I truly was, and I grew immensely being immersed in the Asian culture, not only professionally, but personally. So diversity and inclusion are not only about women and minorities, nor are they about excluding white men. In fact, diversity and inclusion are essential to achieving our goals. They are leadership competencies and a national security imperative. We recognize that the biggest threat facing our nation in the next 3 decades is the rapid pace of change. And part of that is demographics. We need the institutional ability to adapt to this rapid pace of change and keep us, what we call in the Air Force, strategic agility. In 2012, Latino, American, multiracial, and African American births constituted the majority of births in the United States for the first time in our history. It's not just inevitable that our country will experience a demographic shift, it has already happened. The Air Force benefits from the perspective and innovation that people of differing backgrounds, cultures, experiences, competencies inherently bring with them. In the coming decade, as the current majority population becomes the minority, it will become increasingly important for the Air Force to be a destination of choice for talented individuals coming out of the country's current minority communities. This is the business case for remaining a strong all-volunteer force. It is also essential for the Department of Defense to have the cultural competence to meet the needs of the 21st century global environment and be strategically ready for any contingency to which the nation calls us to perform. The Air Force is an innovative service, and thus we are always looking for individuals that grasp the concepts inherent in science, technology, engineering, and math, no matter what the career aspirations of this talent is. Today's Air Force is the most technically complex it's ever been, and we must continue to attract, recruit, develop, and retain true innovative leaders from all across this great nation to make sure we can continue to meet the nation's defense. So we know our most effective communication within this group is when our current Asian and Pacific Islander airmen go out into their own spheres of influence and speak well of their experiences in the Air Force. We are working to deliberately connect our star performers among our minority airmen with communities where aspiring youth can see a path to success in the service. The Air Force has recently been increasing our presence at minority-focused STEM events, such as the Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers National Conference. By bringing a larger team to such events, we're providing representatives and can talk to a much larger spectrum of career opportunities available within the service. The Air Force needs high-performing, talented individuals in its uniform ranks, but we also need approximately 1,200 civilian engineers every single year. So we need a lot of talent. So there's lots of opportunity in the Air Force for both folks in uniform and folks who want to serve in the civil sector. Asian and Pacific Islanders representation in the Air Force has more than doubled over the last 13 years, all during a period where we have decreased our overall strength, which is the lowest we've been since our inception in 1947. This service, diversity of thought, and incredible talent is more critical now than ever. We know there is more talent available in the community, and we are working on several initiatives to attract and retain this talent. The first initiative I'd like to discuss is our mentoring program. Mentorship is something the Air Force believes in strongly, and is something our airmen say they want more of. We launched MyVector in the summer of 2015. It's an online system designed to leverage technology to enable members and mentors to maintain a professional relationship. We've had good success so far with about 18,000 registered mentor profiles and more than 11,000 connections. It's a great way to increase our interaction between current and future leaders, improving connectivity between our different Air Force generations and other demographic groups. People are our most effective and critical weapon system, and that is why we need to continue finding creative ways to connect and communicate with them. Towards this effort, the Department of Defense partnered with Facebook's Chief Operating Officer, Sheryl Sandberg, and on her Lean In initiative, launching Lean In circles across all military branches. Lean In circles are small peer groups who meet regularly to share experiences and advice on overcoming challenges in work and life. I participate in one myself, and I have learned immensely from this group of people, both men and women, on the challenges they face and potential strategies that we collectively come up together to meet those challenges. We've also done some innovative thinking on our height screening requirements for pilots. And as you know, you are more likely to become a general officer if you serve in an operational career field. So it's important for the Air Force to be able to bring a diverse population into our pilot career force. But we found that we had an artificial barrier because we didn't have the ability to give height waivers at any accession source besides the academy. And the academy actually is the smallest officer accession force in the Air Force. So the inability to reach the young people that we bring in outside of the academy and give them height waivers was a significant barrier. And so once you really understand the barrier, we put some equipment down at our ROTC summer camp so that people could apply for a waiver, and it's incredible. In the first year we've done this, we've increased the number of eligibles by about 200 people. Of that 200, 40 were able to make it through an extensive screening process, and 22 are actually starting pilot training. And so it's small incremental steps that have a tremendous impact in the whole. Another initiative, which really the Navy led the way on, is the Career Intermission Program. And this program is designed to retain high-quality airmen by giving them flexibility to transfer from active duty to the reserve component for 1 or 3 years to meet personal or professional needs. Afterwards, they'll come back to us without losing their opportunity for promotion or advancement. Think of it as a sabbatical from military service. This new policy helps both men and women, but particularly women who often face the difficult choice between family and career. And I was just speaking with their West Point superintendent sitting next to me, and we were both talking about how we really need some what I call 21st century policies to deal with our human capital. Yes, yes, it's very true. We have very much, we really have World War II policies, and so we are really working hard to think differently about this millennial generation that we are trying to attract. And how do we give them opportunities to do other things but still be successful? So we have great hope for the Career Intermission Program it will give some flexibility for both men and women to better meet the needs of their family and the needs of their career. And finally, I think that the other huge one is by the order of the Secretary of Defense. to open all closed positions to women in the military. For the Air Force, that was about 4,000 positions. It's about 213,000 positions across the Department of Defense. And while these positions are no doubt physically and mentally demanding jobs, and certainly not everyone can meet the standards, but the bottom line is if you can meet the standard, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. And just to be clear, because a lot of the naysayers believe that the standards have been lowered, that's not true for any service. We all did extensive work trying to measure the standards required for going forward, and those standards are in place. But now there's no barrier of gender. If you can meet the standard, you can be anything you want to be in the United States military. And I think that's really important for a nation like ours. Every individual in the country should have the opportunity to serve. So I think that left a... So just to conclude, while these initiatives are helping us make strides forward, we know we still have a lot of work to do. For every successful initiative that improves our diversity and inclusion, a door is opened that reveals even more opportunity for progress as a service. Diversity and inclusion increase innovation in operational, organizational, and workforce effectiveness. They are asymmetric capabilities other nations cannot yet duplicate. And I'm just going to repeat that because I have a great chief diversity officer, and he's really taught me much more about inclusion and diversity. And if you think about that, and you think about, and you're this incredibly diverse group, what other nation in the world has had such success assimilating such a diverse group of people? I mean, that is a real strategic advantage that no other nation in the world has. The world is and will continue to be complex and dynamic. In order to sustain success, we must have access to the very best talent this country has to offer in order to solve these tough strategic problems and challenges of today, but far into the future as well. Whether civilian or military, active guard or reserve, all backgrounds, experiences, demographics, perspectives, and skills are essential to maintain to be the world's greatest military force now and well into the future. So thank you again for allowing me to share this time with you today. It was my absolute pleasure, and I look forward to some tough questions.
Microphones out there for those who want to ask Grosso questions. You have a few minutes. Don't be shy. Open your eyes and put your head down. Anybody? Okay, wait. All right, like between the sticks.
Okay. Ma'am, thank you for being here. My name is Rebecca Sampson. My question is, with the new policy that you just talked about with the opening up of the fields to the women, what do you see in the Air Force in particular as the biggest challenge in transition?
I think because for the Air Force, this actually I don't think will be as difficult as it might be for the other services, and I don't want to speak for the other services, but we integrated women. We've started integrating women in the 60s actually, and so if you that 4,000 positions, and that's a total force number, so that's active guard and reserve, that's less than 1% of all of our positions. So we think that because we've already integrated women significantly across the force, and even those very high-end special ops units that don't have women operators, they have women in their infrastructure. So we think that it's really the biggest challenge will be having women that meet the physical standards. And I absolutely believe that our women that can meet the physical standards, I just think all the services are going to be competing for them. If you just look at all the athletes, I mean, there's just no doubt Serena Williams and some of our very high-end athletes, you look at the women's U.S. soccer team, but just like men, they're a very small subset of the population. So the fundamental question is, can we attract them? So I think it's going to be just the physical ability. Because I don't think it's going to. My personal view is it's not even going to be the mental ability, because we learned a lot of lessons, and the lessons we learned when we integrated. We had women started flying aircraft in the 70s in our bigger aircraft, and then in fighters in the early 90s. And in fact, we have the first female one-star out at our big training school out at Nellis. So they're just starting to get into the general officer ranks. Our superintendent of the Air Force Academy, she's a female aviator. So I think we've had a little bit of a head start. So I think it's being mindful. You never want to not be mindful. But the operators that I've talked to, because if you go forward, there's a lot of women serving forward as well. So I think the bottom line is if they can meet the physical requirements, I think I think they'll be successful, especially I think the younger generation today. I think it's less of an issue, frankly.
Ma'am, we have a question over here.
And first, thank you for your service. You spoke about millennials, and most of industries competing with public service and the Department of Defense and trying to attract millennials, like this young man behind me who is at the academy. What specifically are you doing to convince young people that serving your country in public service in uniform is as valuable, as challenging, as exciting a career as it is wanting to work for Google or some other company that apparently gets them to think, gee whiz, I can do that too, I can create an app. This is not about creating apps. This is about serving your country and hopefully making a contribution. Can you tell us a little bit about, more specifically, what you're doing with millennials?
Yes, we've been working really on this effort to modernize our personnel programs and policies on a new strategy, because what you'll find is that, especially because our largest, on the officer side, our largest accession source is ROTC, and we have these fixed ROTC units that haven't changed since we were born, basically, but we don't have great access to the entire geography of the United States. So we've done several things. One is using better data analytics to get at markets we don't have. We are intentionally putting more diversity in our recruiting force. So really that idea of having currently diverse people talk to diverse people so that they can understand, one, that you can be successful, that we value diversity, and that we have very strict requirements for dignity and respect. And I think, what the evidence on millennials shows is that they want to do something that matters. And I think there's something significantly different about the United States military than any corporation, frankly. And so to me, if you can help them understand the value of service, I don't think we're going to see, and in fact, we know the Air Force, I can't speak for the other services, but we don't have trouble bringing in enough people. The question is, do we have access to all of the talent? And that's what we are more concerned about. Is every talented American, do they know we exist and would they consider us? So I think actually the military is a great place for millennials, because I can't think of, especially as a junior officer, the responsibility and your impact that you're going to have in any career field is very different than a company that's sole purpose is to make money. And it's interesting, we've been talking to some headhunters that specialize in the tech world, because we need so many scientists and engineers, and I thought it was interesting. One of the experts told us these companies that like Google and Facebook and I'm way out of my league because it's not my expertise, but they basically hire every graduate, literally. They just take all of the talent in the country and bring them on, and it is literally a shark tank. And for about 18 months, it's like sink or swim, quite literally. So, and about 18 months after, so, maybe someone's, depending on when you graduated, 21, 22, 23, those are the people you want to go after, because they're really talented people. They're the 90th percentile, but they didn't make that shark tank, but they have a lot of skills. So I think it's also leveraging the experts in the field, because those people are phenomenally talented. So you have to think differently about that, though. The other thing that we're really starting to take a hard look at is to attract talent. Should we rethink college loan repayment? Because this issue of the debt that young people are bringing in as very young people, it can, depending on the school you go to, it can be anywhere from $60,000 to $250,000. So thinking about some strategies to offer to pay the college debt for some length of service, so that they can get a fresh start, because now we're thinking that might be, from some other experts that we got, that might be a really good way to attract talent that we might not otherwise have attracted, because that debt is such a burden for so many talented young people. So that's some of the things we're thinking about.
not every day we get to hear from a very inspirational leader that actually gives us the facts and ground truth. So, General Grosso, for your leadership, for your inspiration, and for your continued service. Thank you.